Hi, I'm Andrew from Alpine Home Air Products. Today we're going to show you in the course of this video how to install starter ductwork on a furnace or air handler. Starter ductwork is a supply plenum or a return air plenum, and this is simply the large sheet metal pieces which attach to a furnace onto which all the other ductwork is connected. So we're going to actually use a sample furnace today with some starter ductwork, show how the starter ductwork is assembled and then attached to that furnace. So if you're working on your own furnace or air handler project, ductwork will show you how you can do it yourself. It's really quite easy. Okay, here we are in the basement. Behind me I have a return air plenum kit, which we're going to be assembling in just a moment. Before we start, I want to make a note of safety to you. Now we're going to be doing the sheet metal work on a demonstration furnace today, and you can do your own supply and return air sheet metal work on a furnace or air handler. However, it's our recommendation that you have a professional install the remaining portion of your furnace. That means have a professional do the gas piping, the venting, and the high voltage electric. Don't do it yourself. For safety purposes, we want to make sure things turn out well for you. Have a professional do that. Now, you can handle the sheet metal part, but keep something else in mind when you do. Sheet metal is sharp, so take care when working around it and precautions so you don't hurt yourself. Okay, let's get started. First off, what is a supply and return plenum? Again, it's a big box that the air moves through. It's simply starter ductwork, so that all the ductwork piping that needs to be connected throughout the home to distribute the warm or cool air for your furnace or air conditioning has some place to connect to that furnace or air handler. Let's take a look at an existing older furnace which is in this home and the supply and return air plenums that are connected to it. Okay, here's an existing furnace in this home with a supply and return air plenum. Over on the right hand side is the return air plenum. That's this white part here which starts up at the top and continues all the way down to the bottom. And we can see that there's been some changes. This silver part here, somebody made a transition to put in this electronic air cleaner so that that would fit. This is also an ultraviolet purifier which was added at a later time. But this whole duct system is called a return air plenum. What it does is connects up here to the existing ductwork where the air is sucked out of each room in the home, gathered and brought back into this return air, which is then sucked down through the bottom of the furnace, and then it allows it to come up into the body of the furnace, be heated, or in the case of air conditioning, cooled, and then it comes out on this side. Now this side is the supplier or supply air plenum. So this whole area up here consists of the supply air plenum. And we can see that there's been some ducts added to it, which is what you want to do with a supply air plenum, connect ductwork to it. And anything then that's connected to the supply air plenum will allow that air to blow out into the home. So that's what a supply air plenum does. It allows the air to blow out into the home. The return air sucks the air back down. Let's go ahead and put ours together. What tools are needed to assemble and install a supply and return air plenum? These are the tools. A drill chuck, and this holds and drives in sheet metal screws. A drill bit, I'm using a larger auger style bit, but you can just use a 1/2-inch drill bit if you have one. A pair of pliers, a flathead screwdriver, a hammer, sheet metal shears, and this will allow us to cut straight lines as well as circles, a marker, and sheet metal screws. Okay, let's start the assembly of the return air plenum kit. We'll begin by hooking together the two 4-foot pieces which clip into one another. Once they're in place, we tap them with a hammer, and that's it. There's one piece. And there's the other. Now we simply place the lip of one inside the fold of the other, and then tap it in place with a hammer. And then I do that all the way along the edge. Then I flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. This part's done. I'll set it aside. We'll start on the other pieces. The next thing that's done is the return air shoe or boot, as this piece here is referred to as sometimes, is attached to the bottom of the furnace. Now it attaches to the lower left or lower right hand side of the furnace. Before I do that, I'll take these tabs and bend them all down or inside, either by hand or with pliers. Let me move these other items out of the way first. I just bend the tabs down all the way around the edge, like so. Okay, we have all the tabs bent in. The next thing would be to connect the return air boot to the bottom lower left or lower right hand side of the furnace. Now let's see, if I had a demonstration furnace here, I could show you how to do that. Let me see if I can find a furnace. Okay, here's a furnace, great. Now we hook up the return air shoe or boot to the furnace. And the way we do that is simply put it in place. On the lower left or right hand side of the furnace. Then reach inside with a marker and all the way around measure, or rather mark, the inside, rectangle onto the furnace. So this shape here will be marked on the lower side of the furnace, because we're going to cut a hole out in the furnace the same size as the inside of the return air shoe. Yes, you actually cut out the lower side of the furnace. Furnaces are designed to have that hole custom cut in it. You would then cut that with your drill to make a hole opening, and then with your sheet metal shears, you cut that line all the way around. Okay, this is just a demonstration furnace, so we're not going to do that here, but let's say that we have that hole cut. The next thing is to attach the boot to the furnace. Next would be put it in place. You'd simply put the boot in place, and then using your drill and your sheet metal screws, you put screws in through the lip, this little half-inch lip, on the return air shoe, right through the furnace body. Put about 3 screws on each side, and that will hold it tightly in place. Okay? So let's assume that that part's done. Let's talk about assembling the rest of the return air plenum. Next, we'll put this piece on top. Now, before we do that, it's connected with these, 2 of the smaller drives and 2 of the longer drives, which are included in the complete package. These 2 pieces, the longer drives, go on first on the long lengths, and if you look at it closely, there's a little L to it, and the short end of the L faces to the outside of the return air boot, and it simply slides on the lip and is held on in place just by the pressure. Like so. So those are both on. The next thing is to put the longer 4-foot piece here right on top, slipping it inside of these drives. An easy way to do it is start at one end, put one end in first, and then rock it into place to get the other end in. It just fits right down in there. Like so. And it's on. Next thing I do is put on these two little drives, one on either side, and they simply slide in place. If there's any little bends in the metal, if it doesn't look flat or straight, you can just go ahead and get your pliers or hammer and straighten it out. So I take one of these drives, bend one end over 90 degrees, and then it simply slides on like so. And that's it. It's in place. We'll do the same thing on the other side as well. Okay, this looks great. Now the whole idea of a return air is to connect your furnace into return air ductwork. Again, that means ductwork that is sucking the air from various parts of the house. So if you have a return air trunk line, that would be a main duct that runs throughout the home to which other ducts are connected to it. You would then connect the top of this return air into that return air trunk line. Or you could cap the top of it with sheet metal, that which you provide on your own, screw it in place, and then cutting into the return air itself, you could actually connect other ducts, such as round 6-inch or round 8-inch ducts, to it. So that's the whole idea of return air, is to be able to connect to other ductwork or connect other ductwork into it. Now this basement here is only a little bit less than 7 feet tall. The complete return air kit is capable of going about 7.5 feet. This is the top part of the return air kit, which would go way up here on top, but there's not enough space here in this basement, nor would it be needed if we were to actually be doing the installation, because we don't need a piece that goes that high. But it is capable of going that high, and we'll go ahead and show you how to connect the two together. I'll put this piece down here on the ground so that you can see the full view of how that would be done. But it's done the same way that we did these other two pieces. We just use the drives that are provided, and we slide them on. And by doing so, then we'll have one long 7.5-foot piece. Keep in mind that you can cut this, so if you need a piece that's a little bit shorter, you can use your sheet metal shears and do that. The return air drop or plenum can be cut at any different height that you want to connect into pre-existing ductwork. Okay, the assembly of the return air plenum is completed. It looks great. Let's do the assembly of the supply air plenum now. Okay, these are the pieces here for a supply plenum. We have 5 pieces, 2 larger ones, 2 smaller ones, and then this piece here. These would be the 4 sides, and this would be the top, and they all fit together, all 5 pieces, to make a box, a sheet metal box, which fits on top of the furnace or air handler. The pieces are made to fit into each other. They have a little fold on some of the ends, and then once they're all fitted together, you use your screw gun to hold the pieces in place. Now, some of the supply plenums will fit exactly on the furnace you have. Some might need slight trimming because they do fit more than one model. It's easy to do. Let me show you how to do that and see even if you need to for the particular one you have. Now I know we do for this one, and let me show you how I know. First off, these 2 smaller or narrower pieces will be for the narrower side of the furnace or air handler. We'll call this the width. These 2 larger pieces are for the depth or the longer end of the opening of the furnace. So let me go ahead and take some measurements up here and take some measurements of my sheet metal and see if I have to do any trimming before I put it together. Okay, let's measure the width and the depth of the top of the furnace opening. This is where the air blows out. From lip to lip, the width on this furnace is 12.5 inches. And the depth is about 19.5 inches. We want our width pieces and our depth pieces to be about a ½ inch or a 1/4 inch, somewhere in between there, between a 1/4 and a ½ inch longer or wider than each side. So again, if this width is 12.5 inches, we want our width pieces to be about 12 3/4 to 13. If our depth is 19.5, we want our depth pieces to be around 19 3/4 to 20 inches. Let's see how big they are and if we need to do any trimming or not. So let's see how big our depth piece is. And it looks like it's just a little bit over 20 inches, which will be okay. The depth on the furnace opening was about 19 3/4, so that works. Now let's see how wide the width piece is. And the width piece is about 14 1/4, and that's wider than we want, so we'll trim this one. Again, that's because the width on the furnace was 12.5 inches. We want something closer to 13 inches. So we're going to shave about 1 1/4 inches off the width of this particular piece to make that more in line with what we want. So we're going to take 1 1/4 inches off the end that is the one that does not have a bend in it or does not have a seam in it. So that's this end over here. I'll mark it in 1 1/4 inch. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll draw a straight line and cut it. And 1 1/4 inch on this end as well. And then draw a straight line here and cut along that. I'll do the same thing for both pieces. Put a straight edge down and mark the line. Now we cut that piece off. Okay, I have my 2 width pieces cut. Looking at the ends of them where I've cut them, they're a little bit smushed on the trim. So I'm going to use a screwdriver to open that up so they won't be smushed. Okay, it's time to finally put all the sides together. The way we'll do it is we'll put 3 of the sides together, screwing them in, connecting one to the next as we go. Then we'll put the top in place, mark it, trim the top, and finally put the 5th side on. So let's do the first 3 sides. Now the sides fit into each other just simply by sliding the smooth edge into the notched edge. Okay, once it's in place, put some sheet metal screws in it to hold it there. My 3 sides in place. Now it's time to trim the top piece, slide it in before we put on the final side. To do that, we simply measure the width and the depth of the top piece. And I can see that the appropriate width would be 13 inches. And the appropriate depth would be 20 inches. So I'll cut a 13 by 20 inch piece out of the top and slide it in place. So I'll measure out 13 inches by 20 inches. There's 13. And the piece is already 20 inches, so we don't have to cut it on that line, just on the 13. And I'll take a straight edge and draw the line between the two. And trim this. And there's our trim top. Now we'll go ahead and put it in the other 3 sides. So simply slide it in. Now that we have the top in, we'll put that final side on. And just slide it in place like the others. And screw it together. We're all done screwing this together. Let's put the plenum on top of the furnace. And I can see it fits great. Now I'll put a couple of screws on either side through the plenum into the furnace lip, and it'll secure it in place. Now you can connect any other ductwork into the supply plenum that you need to. That's the whole idea with a supply plenum, that it allows you to connect to other ductwork to blow that air throughout the home. So you could cut into here and connect your existing or other ductwork to this box. Go ahead and do that now. Well, congratulations on completing your supply and return air plenums, and thank you for shopping at Alpine Home Air Products.